Hello, baby dolls. Thank you for visiting my cottage. As most of you know, I love to tell stories, tales of terror, tales of ghosts, demons, witches, and vampires. However, there are tales of real-life horror I've never told. Real stories of demons and monsters who happen to be human and the suffering they inflict. These are Auntie's tales of true crime. So sit back, relax, have your favorite drink at hand, and listen to the story of Gypsy Rose. This is the story of a little girl who loved fairy tales, beautiful stories where every hardship is overcome by courage and faith, and every abused, captive, or enchanted princess is rescued by a handsome and loving prince. Wonderful stories with happily ever afters. As the little girl grew to womanhood, she identified more and more with those princesses. She realized that she too was being abused, held captive, and in a very real way enchanted as well. She saw no hope of rescue or escape until she met her prince. This is the story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and how she escaped. On June 14th, 2015, in Springfield, Missouri, police receive a frantic 911 call. A woman was concerned when a couple of strange and sinister posts appeared on the shared Facebook account of her neighbors. They weren't answering their phone or their door, and her concern had turned to fear. When police arrive at the home, they're met with the gruesome sight of 48-year-old Claudina Dee Dee Blanchard slaughtered in her bed. She had been stabbed multiple times and had obviously been dead for a few days. Her special needs daughter, 19-year-old Gypsy Rose Blanchard, was missing. The tight-knit community was horrified at the murder and frightened for Gypsy, a frail girl who was confined to a wheelchair and suffered from many illnesses. Investigators were shocked at the amount of medications left behind, filling a whole closet, and chilled by the girl's wheelchair, also left behind. It seemed that whatever monster had murdered the older woman had also kidnapped her daughter. It didn't take long, however, only 2 days, before Gypsy was found unharmed, and as the details unraveled, it was revealed that nothing about this case was as it seemed. On July 1st, 1991, a beautiful, perfectly healthy baby girl was born to a young couple, Rod and Dee Dee Blanchard, of Golden Meadow, Louisiana. They named her Gypsy Rose. Though already divorced before her birth, the Blanchards kept in touch, as Rod still wanted to help parent his daughter. As time went by, that would become nearly impossible. Though healthy at birth, Dee Dee became convinced that her 3-month-old baby wasn't breathing good while sleeping and suffered from sleep apnea. This was only the beginning of a bewildering list of illnesses and disabilities that little Gypsy would fall victim to throughout her young life. Next was epilepsy and seizures that Dee Dee claimed would impair Gypsy's mental capabilities and caused her to be cognitively disabled. When Gypsy was 8, Dee Dee confined her to a wheelchair, determining she had muscular dystrophy. Gypsy was able to walk, but was strongly discouraged from doing so by her mother, who told her and everyone that her muscles were weakening. As time went on, Gypsy's ailments included leukemia, asthma, hearing and vision problems, allergies, a gastrointestinal disorder that required a feeding tube to be inserted into her stomach, and many more. Because Dee Dee insisted that her salivary glands be removed, Gypsy's teeth began to deteriorate and had to be extracted. During her childhood, Gypsy would be taken to over 100 doctors, endure hundreds more hospital visits, and countless surgeries, along with other painful procedures. Gypsy's father had tried to stay in her life, but was so intimidated by his daughter's many illnesses that he didn't question his ex-wife, who strictly monitored and limited their visits. When Katrina hit in 2005, the mother and daughter, who had lost everything, relocated to Springfield, Missouri, where Dee Dee limited Rod's involvement to phone calls. Dee Dee had been receiving help from various charities, government programs, and support from Rod, but after Katrina, their story got national attention. The sickly young girl, wheelchair-bound, with her oversized glasses, shaved head, and sunny smile, captured the hearts of many, along with her brave mother, who was raising and taking care of her alone. Their strength, courage, and positive outlook in the face of such hardships seemed to inspire so many who met them or saw their story on TV. Springfield's Habitat for Humanity built them a quaint pink house to live in, custom built for Gypsy with wheelchair-friendly features and an elaborate ramp. Other national charities provided monetary donations, free trips to Disney World and Disneyland, free flights to various hospitals for treatments, trips to sporting events, conventions, where Gypsy would cosplay as her favorite Disney princesses. What nobody realized, including a disturbing amount of doctors, was that the whole thing was a lie. Although never diagnosed or even properly investigated, the evidence is overwhelming that Dee Dee suffered from Munchausen by proxy syndrome, a mental disorder in which a caregiver causes their charge to be sick, makes up an illness, or exaggerates the severity of an illness, all for attention, sympathy, or financial gain. In Dee Dee's case, it appears to have been for all three. In the meantime, despite Dee Dee's assertion that she wouldn't live past her teens, Gypsy was growing up. Having been homeschooled by her mother for years, she longed to be able to make friends, to be a little more independent of her mother's constant presence, and live a more normal life. Having grown up with the lie, Gypsy believed that she was ill. It's understandable. The endless medication she was given often mimicked the symptoms of whatever illness she supposedly had. Gypsy wanted to be like other girls, wanted to learn how to apply makeup, wanted to meet a boy who would be the loving prince she dreamed of. Most of Gypsy's ideas of romantic love were formed by the many Disney movies she grew up loving. They were actually one of the few things she was allowed to watch. This, combined with her unavoidable blossoming womanhood and sexuality, is what led her to make her own secret account on Facebook, apart from the one she shared with her mother. Encouraged by this tiny bit of independence, Gypsy made an account on a Christian dating site. This is how she met her prince. 24-year-old Nicholas Godejohn of Big Bend, Missouri, appeared to be her perfect soulmate. He told her she was beautiful. He told her he loved her. He accepted that she was in a wheelchair. It wasn't till a year later that Gypsy confessed to him that she could walk, so deeply entrenched in the lie that was her life. Nick also had challenges. He'd been diagnosed with Asperger's and was on the autism spectrum. Doctors had said he'd always have the mind of a 15 or 16-year-old. He also revealed to Gypsy that he had multiple personalities, including a few dark ones, such as Victor, a 500-year-old vampire, and a frightening demonic personality simply called the Dark One, who would threaten to rape and murder her when they spoke. Despite these red flags, Gypsy accepted Nick as well, and their long-distance relationship became more intense. They participated in online role play, sometimes in text, sometimes in video chat. Nick had convinced Gypsy to immerse herself in his BDSM interests, with her playing the submissive. He convinced her to make other personalities to match his. Although happy to have a boyfriend at last, Gypsy's home life had taken a turn for the worse as she got older, and she was growing more and more desperate. She was believing and trusting her mother less and less. When she discovered paperwork that stated she had been born in 1991 instead of 1995, as Dee Dee claimed, everything began to fall apart. Before she had met Nick, Gypsy had tried to run away, ending up at the home of mutual friends. Dee Dee was able to find her easily and showed up threatening to call the police and claiming that Gypsy was underage. Upon her return, Dee Dee lined the windows with dark tinting so no one could see inside. She then chained Gypsy to her bed for 2 weeks, beating and starving her in turn as punishment, smashing her laptop and phone with a hammer, then threatening to smash her fingers next. Even though Dee Dee had been systematically abusing Gypsy for years, medically and psychologically, she had always seemed to be a loving and doting mother when her daughter was a child and compliant. It was when Gypsy began to rebel that the abuse became physical. She began to actively fear her mother. By 2015, nearly 3 years after meeting online, the possible murder of Dee Dee became a topic of conversation between Gypsy and Nick. Not wanting to go that far, Gypsy always referred to it as Plan B. Fearing what Dee Dee would do if she found out that Gypsy had met a man online, the two first contrived a plan to meet in public, as if for the first time in Dee Dee's presence. Gypsy had hope that if her mother could only meet her love and get to know him, that maybe she would approve of Nick being in her life, and they wouldn't have to sneak around anymore, and hopefully get married someday with her blessing. With this plan in mind, Gypsy bought Nick a bus ticket to travel to Springfield from Michigan. The plan was that they would meet at the movie theater. Gypsy and Dee Dee already had plans to see the live-action Cinderella movie, and it seemed the perfect place to set up the accidental meeting. Unfortunately, Dee Dee was far from impressed with the young man, thinking it strange that a guy his age would show up alone to a movie theater to watch Cinderella. Despite wanting to move seats, Gypsy refused and gave Nick most of her attention, causing Dee Dee to be jealous and angry. At some point during the movie, the pair managed to sneak off to the men's restroom, where Gypsy received her first kiss and lost her virginity as well. Dee Dee did not know about the tryst, but later she would unleash more rage and abuse on Gypsy for spending time with what she described as a creep. After the epic failure of the movie meeting and her mother's escalating abuse, Gypsy began to give more serious thought to Plan B. One night, after a particularly bad fight, she texted Nick to say she was 100,000% in and to ask Victor to carry out the murder. Plan B escalated from there as the pair made plans. Once again, Gypsy bought Nick a bus ticket to Springfield, then met him at the door with a knife when he arrived. Gypsy hid in the bathroom and listened to her mother scream and call out for her, but was frozen in place. When it was over, the two had sex on Gypsy's bed. She claims that Nick, or Victor, had wanted to rape her mother, but she asked him to rape her instead. Nick never denied this. Later, after mailing the knife to Nick's mother's house, the couple caught a bus to Michigan, where they stayed with his mother until their capture 2 days after Dee Dee's body was discovered. The Facebook posts, which would lead to their capture, were made by Gypsy herself, worried that her mother's body had not yet been found. It wasn't till after her arrest that Gypsy found out many truths. She didn't have leukemia, muscular dystrophy, or any of the many illnesses she was led to believe she had for most of her life. In fact, the only imperfection she seemed to have was a slightly lazy eye. She also found out that she really was born in 1991 and that her true age was 23, not 19 as reported. Some of these things she had suspected, but she was still shocked to realize that her mother had kept her as sick and as young as possible for her entire life. Dee Dee's friends and neighbors had only good things to say about her, at least until they found out her lies. They said she was kind and loving to everybody and the best mother anybody could imagine. However, Dee Dee's own family members have quite a different view. Her own father insisted she got what she deserved. Sadly, no one wanted her ashes, and they were supposedly flushed down a toilet. She'd been in trouble with the law for shoplifting, writing bad checks, credit card fraud, and stealing from family members. She had poisoned her stepmother, who survived, and took care of her own ailing mother, who didn't. It was speculated on that she had starved her mother, leading to her death. Another shocking revelation was that Dee Dee herself had been a victim of her own mother's Munchausen by proxy and had been kept ill through most of her childhood. So was she a monster fueled by greed, or was she just very ill and needed help? She should have been held accountable for the things she did, but we have to remember she paid with her life and is unable to speak up for herself. At first, Gypsy tried to deny all involvement or even knowledge of the crime, but the evidence, including all the texts between Gypsy and Nick, were overwhelming. A year after her arrest, Gypsy took a deal and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years. She's currently serving her sentence in the Chillicothe Correctional Institute and will be eligible for parole in 2024. She will be 32 years old. Nicholas Godejohn was tried separately and found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Though shut out of a big part of her life, Gypsy's father Rod and her stepmother Christy have supported and stood by her through everything. Rod is now spearheading a campaign for her early release. Gypsy plans to live with her dad and raise awareness of Munchausen by proxy upon her release. Nick claims to this day that he still loves Gypsy and always will. Gypsy doesn't feel the same. Recently, it was reported that she's become engaged to a pen pal. Gypsy Rose shows much remorse for her part in her mother's murder. However, when asked if prison was preferable to the life she lived before, she didn't hesitate to say yes. Gypsy Rose lived in a world where evil witches, monsters, and dragons were slain by a heroic prince who would do anything to save his princess from being menaced by such creatures. In her mind, a prince came along to rescue her when all other avenues of escape seemed to have been blocked off. All doors slammed shut. The many doctors she saw never helped her. Social services never helped her. The police never helped her. The people she ran to didn't help her. They were all charmingly and effectively manipulated by her mother, who had also successfully manipulated Gypsy into believing no one would help her. Nicholas Godejohn was willing and eager to help her. Can we really blame Gypsy for living in the alternate reality her mother wouldn't let her leave? Can we blame her for playing by those rules, even if the dragon was her own mother? Was Gypsy a desperate victim who truly saw no other way out? Or did she inherit her mother's darkness? And what are we to make of Nicholas Godejohn, left to rot after playing his own role? Is he a dangerous psychopath who's where he needs to be? Or was he just a mentally challenged innocent, used and coldly discarded by a born manipulator, as some believe? We'll probably never know the true answers to these questions, but one thing is certain: no one in this story is truly innocent.